Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Awaken Woman podcast. I'm your host, Ale, and in today's episode, I'm with a very special guest, Rick William, who is an EQ mastery coach, somatic therapist, entrepreneur, and business strategist, and not to say a leader in the coaching industry. So we are very honored to have Rick with us today, talking about his inspiring story, somatic practices, emotional regulation, and how to support men on the path of healing. So thank you so much, Rick, for being here with us. It is an honor to have you as the first male guest on the podcast, so no pressure.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So Rick, let's start with the beginning. Your
hmm
story is extremely inspiring. So you exited your startup at age 25 and decided to travel the world and started supporting some of the world's most influential leaders and spiritual teachers. So what prompted you to take that turn in your career?
It's a beautiful question. I just want to say it's so beautiful to be here with you. I see the work that you're doing, and I assume all your listeners are on a similar path too. So it's really beautiful to be here, and yeah, excited to share and kind of dive in with you today. It's a beautiful question, and as we're I'm going to assume mostly trauma informed here. I was very ambitious in my kind of late teen, early 20s, and very driven. But and that was kind of beautiful. It was great that I got to go through that lesson and learn how to go out in the world and create things. And I created success, and I think there's a science to success. If you stick at anything long enough and you work hard and you study, and you can create success. And I created success. I was getting the things that I wanted to get, quote unquote, but I hadn't learned the art of fulfillment, and I hadn't learned, the essentially what I'm saying there is like the space where it was coming from wasn't from my heart. It was to,
Yeah,
to please mom and dad in some way, and to
yeah,
please my peers. And none of those things are bad. I'm not saying it's I don't think that it's bad to do those things,
yeah.
but it wasn't necessarily it didn't give me the results that I was looking for in my life. And by that, I'd mean like the fulfillment and love and connection and deeper meaning and purpose. And it's beautiful that I had to go through that journey, because now it helps me actually be able to support others who are in that transitionary phase between a life built on success
Yeah.
versus a life of deep fulfillment and meaning and connection and all the beauty and magic that brings.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think, well, I resonate with that a lot. And I think probably most of us, when we just get into, the rat race, when we are just trying to chase or and follow that success that it's imposing us from,
Mm-hmm.
society, our parents, we tend to think that that's really what will bring us that happiness and fulfillment, right? So it's a constant
Mm-hmm.
chasing of something and something external to us. So it's when we have this awakening, I'm sure you call it awakening too, or when we start realizing what I mean, there's deeper meaning in life. What is my purpose? What is it that I'm aligned with? What is it that I want to do? And that's probably all these spiritual path that we take, and we are also the ones who are empowering and inspiring others to follow that path. As you know, the path is beautiful, is transformational, is you can say, we come back to our real essence, to ourselves. There's a lot of things we can talk about that, and it's also very challenging. So it requires a lot
Mm-hmm.
of resilience, it requires a lot of strength, it requires a lot of consistency, willingness to take accountability, willingness to see our shit for what it is instead of blaming others. So
uh,
what would you say was, how did you embrace that phase, which is the most
uh,
challenging?
that's a beautiful question. It's so true. Oh my goodness. I think I was just sick of my own shit. I think that's it. It was just like, I was just fucking done. I'm like, I've got to try something different. Everything I'm trying is not working. And, I'm the factor that's in all of these situations. So maybe it's me. And I just started to look more deeply. And, I was fortunate enough to like meet teachers and just hear the right information and the right books and start practicing it. And I don't know why, like I was just always super willing to like lean in. I'm like from being a little kid, I was always interested in esoteric things. I was doing hypnosis at a super young age, and I had some out of body experiences when I was younger that were really profound. And I think they always just stuck with me. I always sensed that there was something more, and I was just like, I was like, there's just got to be more than this, and it's me who's showing up like this, and just like, I just fucking consumed like every podcast, every book, and was just like, I've got to figure this thing out, and I just kept on that path. I just kept going, and just being like, okay, like God, universe, spirit, like help me through this. Like give me the guys, the support, the teachers that I need so that I can work through this. And you know what? Life, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, showed up. And time and time again, I would get the right information just when I needed it. And it would help me through whatever it is that I was going through. And, I think it is challenging, to like really fucking face yourself is challenging, like how I showed up for other people in my life. Like I've hurt people and it hurts to feel that. And I was hurt and it hurts to feel that. And to actually process all of that and to like actually sit with it and sometimes admit some of these things in and of themselves. Like, maybe a parent didn't, well, I'll just say it. My parents didn't love me in the way that I needed to be loved. And I had to learn, you know what I mean? Like even there, I didn't want to admit it publicly because I love my mom and I love my dad and they did their best. And this is no deterioration of their character. They're both beautiful people. But we make mistakes and things happen. And, I didn't get the love that my specific constitution needed. And I had to learn how to give that to myself. And in the process of doing that, beautiful things started to shift in my life, my working through my attachment wounding, which I'm pointing at there, and learning how to be my own father and be my own mother, be my own sweetness. So that I didn't necessarily crave that from women in the same way, so that I could actually show up and give something, both in my strength and also in my love. And that was a process, and it's still a process. But if I'm being super honest, like I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, fuck, my head's above water, and like things are pretty good. And I don't mean that to boast, but just to be like, fuck, like the work actually does work. And, I can have conversations with, people in my life now that are challenging. And because I feel secure enough in myself, I can have that conversation. And it's like the simple things, right? Like I think awakening or enlightenment or these things can sometimes be like blown up, but like, hey, what about just like, being able to work through the conversations that are a little challenging with your spouse, your beloved, and your friends, and to admit the truth and to admit when you've done something wrong and to be able to own that and to be able to kind of walk life in kind of enjoyment of whatever is showing up in the moment, whether we're doing our dishes or whether we're getting something more beautiful with our beloved, or we're going to watch a sunset, like to really get to just bring the best of us, whatever's happening. And I think that's the beauty of the path of like what everyone I think is pointing at, right? It's like pointing in that direction, and I'm still definitely learning, but it's it's just beautiful. It's beautiful to get to do this work and to share this work and to talk about this work. It's like the coolest thing ever. You know what I mean? It's like some people are interested, and I don't think it's special, right? It's like some people are interested. Some people are interested in like cars or football or motorbikes or like whatever your thing is, right? Whatever your shtick is. And this is just the thing that I'm interested in, that we're probably all interested in. I think it's a beautiful endeavor as well. So.
Oh yeah. And I'm just smiling because I resonate with so many things that you've said and so many different parts that I would like to touch on, maybe the ones that really resonated with me the most. So I think we come here to live the whole human experience, right? Like I'm here to live it all. And the more I embrace the challenge, and I think is what you also said, the more we are it's okay. I'm gonna go through the pain. I'm gonna go through taking accountability and knowing that I also hurt people, because for me, I think it's for everyone, right? Like when we have to accept that we hurt people, it hurts more than when we are hurt. And why? Because there's an element of acknowledging there's something I need to improve on myself. There's something that is not aligned, because we are, loving and powerful beings. We are not meant to hurt people, but because of the shit that we go through, and we separate ourselves from our authentic self, from the union, from being connected to everyone, that's where the hurt come from, right? Like we are not operating from our most enlightened or aligned. I would say aligned, because enlightened can sound very much like Buddhism or being like a Buddha. We're all humans. We are still like, gonna face shit. We're gonna react. We are gonna, have also behaviors that we are not proud of. But coming to this life, and this is what kept me going, and going back to the question, how do we go through the challenge? Because that's what I want people that are listening to us. Don't quit when it gets challenging, because that's the moment that you are about to experience a big breakthrough and a big transformation. When you keep going, when you know that there's a higher vision, when you know there's something bigger, that there's, we don't come here to experience pain. Yes, pain is part of it, but we come here to also experience the duality, the most amazing love, connection, freedom, whatever drives you. So I think that's one of the parts that came to me when you were explaining your own story. And one thing that I would like you to maybe dive deeper a little bit. People will ask, but Rick, how come did you think you didn't have everything? You didn't feel content and happy if you, in the eyes of Western society, you had it all. You had a startup, you had financial freedom, you had family. So what happened there? What was that deeper knowing that was not success or happiness for you?
Well, ultimately, it was a feeling.
Yeah.
It was a feeling, and it's an inner knowing. It was just that, like, there is a bell of authenticity and truth that rings, right? We say something rings true. That expression, it rings true.
Yeah.
Because it is. It's a vibration. It's a feeling. And I could feel at that point in my life that it wasn't authentic. It was like, I don't feel like I'm me. Like, that was the only way I could describe it, is like, I know I'm a me, but it doesn't feel, there's something off. And I had to unpack and unlayer all of those parts of me that were protective mechanisms, essentially, that were preventing greater and more authentic version of me to come through. And that was simply just because I didn't feel safe. It wasn't because of any other reasons. It was just that I didn't feel safe. So, I went out, and based on what Western society said was going to create happiness, I was like, cool, I'll go for that. That sounds awesome. But I got there, and it didn't fit for me. And lots of people that I meet, pretty much everyone that I meet, shares the same story, right? It's like it's archetypical story. It's almost cliche. But it's, and some of the greatest wisdom is a cliche. And, yet we know this, but we're not living in a world where people are living their purpose, living their dharma, living in alignment with their truth. And I think we're all here to walk that path, to embody that ourselves, and to be able to help support those that want that support and want a life like that, and get to lead by example in that. And what an honor that we all get to partake in that.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful journey, the ones we, the courageous ones, I said, but I think we are all courageous. We just need to, really believe on this higher purpose for us, that we came to really experience everything that we want to experience externally is something that we have within us. So I think that for me was also some of the most impactful, like maybe the messages when I was like, this is not what I'm expecting in life, right? Like just chasing that rat race, just escalating the corporate ladder, like getting to that next role. And it was never really what I thought it was. Oh, okay, so I already got to where I wanted to be. I still feel that void. So that's probably like on challenges in life. Love, I think, for us also has been one of the main drivers or catalysts for our own growth and healing. And so I wanted to touch as well on the reparenting ourselves, right? So that's, I think, one of the most key parts as well in our journey, when we have to accept that our parents did the best they could with their level of healing, with their level of consciousness. And back then, our parents didn't have all this information, like, about mental health, about somatic practices, about well-being. So it's also, having to face that pain that we didn't allow ourselves to feel when we were kids. So because both of us are in the somatic practices, space, what has been for you one of the most important somatic practices during your healing journey?
That is a beautiful question. And I want to touch on something that you said before, because I think it's important, especially for people listening. Like, when people come and speak to me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, when people come and speak to me, they're normally at a part of their journey where they're feeling some of the effects of not being in full alignment. And that can sometimes feel challenging. But what I remind people when they're in that is actually, like, you're way further than you think. Because the fact that you have this awareness, the fact that you're in this challenge right now, already means that you're near the end of it. Like, you're already aware of it. You're already probably having a conversation with friends. You're like, it's in your space. You're just in that final phase where you get to work through this and get on the other side of that. So, like, if anyone's in a moment like that right now, as you were pointing out before, just like keep going through it. And there is light at the other side of that. It's a transition. And I'm always excited for people. I'm like, oh, amazing. Like, and they're like, why the fuck why are you excited? Like, I'm in this challenge. And like, I'm compassionate, understanding as well. I'm not just like, yay. But at the same time, like, they can feel, because I know what it's like to get on the other side of that. And I see people go through that transition. So I'm always like excited for them. So if anyone's in that, like, I'm genuinely excited for you. But to answer your other question, I'm going to answer this slightly differently, because I think in the somatic space, something that I'm seeing right now is like a heavy focus on like somatic practices being the way. And I think they're amazing. Like, I love them. But I actually think it takes a holistic 360 approach. And the things that I've found most useful are actually combining multiple tools. And I break them into 4 pillars. The first is attachment wounding, because that's often at the root. Even if we look at multiple different traditions, whether that be, in Buddhism in the East, or whether we look at even, South American shamanism, and they're talking about, sweet and bitter plants, or the yogis talking about, male and female doing male and female deity yoga, where they're visualizing, male or female deities, and then they're internalizing that. It's attachment wounding. Like, that's what they're working on. So at the root, and a lot of these traditions knew that. The first pillar is really cleaning up our attachment. The second pillar that I talk about and share with my clients is emotional regulation, which we're tapping into somatic work here. And the trainings that I've found most useful was polyvagal theory. And I've like adapted that in some ways, and as like I've worked with it. But learning how to actually just regulate my nervous system was super helpful, so that when I go into deeper work, I can actually know how to, when like a release is happening. When I first started out in some of the somatic practices, I would have big releases and I'd be dysregulated for days. I didn't know how to come back to connection. So before I work with anyone, before taking them into a somatic release practice, I have them learn how to just regulate their nervous system through the kind of 3 states of activation, the sympathetic nervous system, into deactivation, the parasympathetic or dorsal vagal, and then back into ventral vagal or connection. and then have them go into deeper somatic practices. And that's been super helpful for me and also my clients. So the first one, attachment. The second one, emotional regulation and somatic work. The third one is improving and increasing our metacognition. So like our self-reflective awareness. And that's our ability to pay attention. Like right now, you're like right here with me. I can like feel you right here. You're reflecting, you're present, you're aware. You obviously have good reflective abilities. And I think that's a really important skill because, you know, when you're doing somatic work or you're doing this deeper work, if you don't have the ability to self-reflect on your experience, it means you don't have the ability to kind of course correct as you're going. So that's a really important skill to learn. And then the fourth one, which actually is kind of important to do last, is learning communication skills, because that also helps us when we're emotionally regulated and connected. Then it allows us to then go out into the world and, you know, learn how to communicate more efficiently, more elegantly, in a way that actually has us have our needs met and understand how to meet the needs of others. And like those four things, I'm like, if you just work on all four of those as a human being, no matter where you're at in your, even if you think you don't need healing, your life will improve. Up to the point, if you've got a personality disorder and you work on all four of those things, your life will radically improve to the point of remission. So, you know, I think like when I look at it, I'm like, those are the four pillars that I would like, if I could go back and like retrain my younger self, like those would be the skills that I'd be working on right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those four pillars, and I think it's a really good way to explain it. Maybe it makes things more clear for the ones who are listening to us. Sometimes when and as you said before, you know, when people start having that self-awareness, it tends to be very overwhelming, because now you have all this information that is coming to you that you don't even know how, you know, where to start. So it's normal, it's okay to be overwhelmed. That just means that you need to give your body, your nervous system time to, it takes time for our nervous system to integrate what we learn. That's one of the main things I've realized. Even like I'm still integrating things from last year. So we gotta start being more patient, because before coming to this work, we come with this sense of urgency in life, you know, with chasing the adrenaline, with the rush, you know, workaholism, like working here, working then, nonstop, like home, work, kids, family, partners, like it's a nonstop. So of course your nervous system is gonna get used to being in high alert. It's gonna be used to being activated all the time. So for us to learn new ways of being and teach our nervous system to go back to parasympathetic state, which is the calm state, we need to teach ourselves to be patient and slow down. So that's probably one of the, is part of the pillar that you mentioned about emotional regulation. And all the pillars that you mentioned have been key part in my healing journey, and something that I also, you know, emphasize with my clients. Attachment theory was actually the first gate for me to start this journey, from coming from a relationship where I didn't really, on a cognitive level, couldn't understand why we were not working. And it was just so many different ways of seeing relationships, of seeing intimacy, of seeing connection. And I've always been like you, very curious. I've always wanted to always improve myself and learn and learn and learn. So that's when I discovered attachment theory. And that's basically the Pandora box where, you know, everything else came in. So I love that you actually say that, Rick, because I haven't heard much, you know, many leaders and coaches, somatic coaches in the industry, incorporating this holistic approach, which I think is very important, because when we tend to be only in our body, well, we forget, you know, the cognitive level, which is part of us. When we are too much in our mind, we forget the body and you know, the nervous system. And it also comes the part of the spirit, where is no mind or body, it's just be present. You know, all the practices that we can do to be present: meditation, yoga, breath work, walking in nature, dancing, embodiment, you know, starting to embody more like this sense of being and flow without having to be in your body. You don't need to even think about what's the next move. Just let yourself flow, and without being in your mind, which is, you know, if we put all the pieces together, it can come back to the four pillars. So thank you so much for bring that up. And then the next question will be, in practical terms, if you talk about like, one of your normal day where you implement all these pillars, how does that look in your normal life in practical terms?
That's a good question. And you're talking about like my own personal practice, right?
Yeah, where you
Okay.
incorporated like these 4 pillars, or like it doesn't have to be all of them in one day, but just for people to understand in practical terms how they can implement the four pillars.
Okay, great. So like right now in my practice, I'm really loving Qigong. So my day normally starts with, I wake up at about somewhere between 6 and 7, and I walk my dog up the hill. And there's like I live in Costa Rica now, and yeah, there's some like mountains where I kind of sit. I put my mat, and I've got like a seat that I made up there. And yeah, I'll sit down and I'll maybe meditate for 20, 30 minutes. And my meditation practice has been something that I've been doing every day for the past decade. And it's been super helpful, really, really helpful. And there's times where I've like not being meditating as effectively, and you can meditate not effectively, which is something that I didn't know. But I've had some really good guidance and training on that. And I meditate for 20, 30 minutes, really connecting to my heart. Right now I'm, connecting to both like my heart, my desire, my power, and kind of bringing those energies in together, and like the kind of clarity that can bring, and the kind of calmness that can bring. So I do that for like 20, 30 minutes. And then I'll practice Qigong. And I really love Qigong because it really has this ability to like help keep the mind busy enough on something that it allows you to move into that. You're speaking about it before, into that flow where you're just like, I'm just like present with my body, with nature, with exactly what's happening right here, right now. And it's just such a like a beautiful experience. And then that weaves itself into my daily life. So that's kind of a typical day, but there are other practices that I might bring out. I might intentionally regulate my nervous system into states of dysregulation, which might seem crazy. But that's how we actually learn how to come back into connection. So sometimes I'll do practices like that. Sometimes I've got a neurofeedback device over there. So if I'm, really wanting to work on building my attention, I've done some, neurofeedback training that can be really useful. And, occasionally I'll do breath work. I trained in it for a year, but it's not a practice that I actually do that frequently. I can find it for me personally, and people are different. It can be a little overstimulating for my nervous system. So that is the kind of the things that I do just on a daily basis to connect with nature, with my heart, with life. And I'll pray as well. What that might mean different things to different people, but I connect to what I believe to be spirit, or the universe, or God, or whatever we want to call it, that power that is beating all of our hearts. And sometimes I'll connect and pray with that for a little bit, and then I walk my dog back home, and let me set my laptop up, and I'll connect with my clients or friends or my partner. That's a typical day.
And it's important part to mention, their pets. They are so important as well in bringing that love and connection. So thank you. That's beautiful practices. And as you said, Rick, and something that I would like also people who are listening to us to take is focus on what works for you. We're all different beings, and what we are sharing here is only Rick's experience, my own experience, but your own experience might be different. So it's always trying to use discernment in what works for you. As coaches, we went through our own story, our own healing. Yes, we are now trained, and we went through our own studies, but at the end of the day, you have the same capacity, you have the same ability, you are your own coach. You can ask yourself those powerful questions, and I think you probably will resonate, like, is not seeing your therapist, your coach, your counselor, whoever you're working with as that God, that savior, because it's really just taking away the power that you have within yourself. So I think it's important that people, find their own practices, find what works for them. And you know, this is a trial and error, like everything in life. And we
And
learn.
that's the self-reflective awareness piece, right?
Exactly. That
Mm-hmm.
was so important. Thank you for mentioning that
Mm-hmm.
self-reflective part, which is so important in, you know, in your inner work journey, healing journey, reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you so much for that. That's beautiful. So now I want to go more towards the path on how we can support men on the path of healing. I work only with women, and of course, me being a woman, I'm more surrounded by women on this path. I see more men also taking, you know, more the lead, the step in starting their healing journey. So men and women are very different in the way that we, you know,
Mm-hmm.
we regulate ourselves, we feel emotions. Our emotional world itself is completely different. So
Mm-hmm.
from your perspective as a coach, as a, you know, leader, being coach so many different men from different backgrounds and life stories and all, what could be the best way for women to support men in their healing journey?
It's a beautiful question. And I think there's a few things that can be supportive. And the first is obviously, you know, being the embodiment of the change in your own life. And that's always the case, right? You brought it back to that before. Like, you are your own coach, healer, guide, and you might have healers, coaches, and guides, but ultimately it's you. And any good coach like yourself will always remind you of that to bring it back home. And I think that's the first point is, you know, if you're wanting your man or the men in your life to benefit from the healing work and transformation work, is, you know, being in the embodiment of that yourself and letting the fruits of that begin to shine where it becomes obvious. You know, there's something, and it's almost like there's a little sparkle in your eye, or people can feel it and sense it. From a very practical level, your nervous system's probably better regulated, and, you know, people through neuroception are picking up on that unconsciously, so you feel different. That's what people experience. So that would be the first point. But beyond that, to be more practical and answer your question a little bit more detail, I think the second piece, which I find helpful for my partner and for many people in my life, is, you know, pointing at things and encouraging, you know, positive behavior when you see it, not out of manipulation, but out of sincerity. And that's like, and everything I'm about to share is also the place it's coming from. So if it's from like your trap, this is where the trap can be, like you're trying to change your partner because actually you're avoiding doing the deeper work yourself. You got to watch out for that, to like make sure you're not projecting change onto them.
Yeah.
And actually it's coming from a place of like, I'm receiving such beautiful benefit from this work that I'd love you to be able to benefit too. And if you're coming from that space, even just that itself, there'll be like an authentic opening that might open the conversation that would flow from there, right? So
Yeah.
like the space you're coming from, but more practically, so that's an important piece, like the space you're coming from.
Yeah.
And then encouraging the behavior. And, you know, if there are, you know, they're maybe sharing vulnerably, or they're sharing in their strength, or they're moving in a direction that's better for them, being encouraging and supportive of that. If they do share something vulnerable with you and you're wanting to see more of that, then, you know, don't slap them down, or don't make them feel bad or wrong from it, because then it might be harder for them to step back into that. So really being an encouraging support, you know, really being an embodiment of the work yourself.
Yeah.
And then lastly, you know, maybe like pointing and like, you know, you women are generally good at this, but like you can like point, right? You can usher your man and you can help guide him and support him. And you might like point at other men that are doing that. It could be the Rock on thingy, and like how he shared something on Instagram. It was like powerful and vulnerable. You know, that's probably where you need to come from. Like, find men that your men would resonate with, or the men in your life would resonate with, that maybe have integrated both of those qualities, or maybe got on the other side of whatever challenge it is that the men in your life are looking to get on the other side of. And then pointing out that behavior, like, oh, like, you know, he has a great qualities of strength and compassion. Like, that's a really beautiful quality in a leader and a man. Like, point at the things, you know, like, but from a place of like, you're not saying your man's not that, you're
Yeah.
saying he is that, and that's a beautiful quality. So you're kind of like ushering and guiding in that way. I think that can be useful. And what else? yeah, I think that's it. I think if you're being the embodiment of the work, and you're, you know, coming from a place that you genuinely care for, and then you're pointing at the qualities, whether it be in him or whether it be in other men in society, on TV, you know, like characters that you can point at that isn't a relational element to make them feel bad or anything like that, but
Yeah.
just to be like, that's a beautiful quality in a leader, don't you think? You know, like that kind of conversation, and create conversation starters that may help usher and guide him in a way that's going to be, you know, really supportive.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I think women or ladies, please listen to this important information here, because it's coming from a man who has done a lot of work with other men. And it's something that the embodiment part is so important, because we cannot expect our partner to be someone that we are not. So that's manipulation. That's not coming from an aligned place. And as you said, Rick, is projection. So women tend to be more controlling in the way of avoiding their own emotions. So I want my partner to change, so therefore I don't have to deal with these uncomfortable emotions, with our own pain. And men tend to be more distant, more avoidant, right? Because women will come with this need for changing or wanting the relationship to be a certain way. And of course, that will just bring a lot of pressure on men, and they will push back. So the solution, and feel free to jump in, Rick, with your own opinion as well, is women to take a step back and start embodying that person that we want our partner to be, and leading with that example. Because if it's a partner that is wanting to be in your life, wanting to build together, you're gonna inspire him to also rise up, but at his own pace. So you gotta be willing to do that, letting him follow his own journey, and that sometimes can be slower. So it comes back to being patient. And the other part is, you know, if it's not a person who is meant to be in our journey, if the person has not the capacity to do that work at that stage, doesn't mean it doesn't have the capacity at all, but that might not be his moment. Then we gotta have, you know, discernment, and let that person go. But what we want to emphasize now in this part of the topic is, yeah, embodying that change and starting to be that change for yourself. So that was, yeah, I think very, very beautiful. And yeah, men and women, you know, we tend to deal with things in a different way, and that's what is the beautiful, you know, the beautiful part. That's how we yeah, connect with each other deeper, and have that contrast. So thank you so much, Rick. I think
can I add one bit to that?
Please,
okay, cool.
Please, yes.
So in the somatic space, or in the healing space, you might often hear, or you might have heard, that safety is the medicine, or like safety is the key, right? And what I actually learned, especially from working with men, is that safety isn't just love and compassion, which is often associated with. We often think of safety and we're like, oh, love and compassion. Yes, love and compassion, it's beautiful. But also safety can be strength. So the way that your man might resonate with certain teachers or certain guides or certain books might have to come in a way, or in a delivery system that makes him feel safe, that the other man has his back. Because as men, you know, we have been to wars together, like in terms of our history, like we had to be there for each other in a different way. And it's kind of in our biology that we want to be able to have, like, you know, love and connection, but also respect for the other. So there's this like kind of like strength in itself is also safety. And especially as a woman, I imagine you might experience that when you're maybe looking for a partner, that you probably don't want him just to be super soft and compassionate. If you're, you know, a feminine leaning woman, or a feminine leaning man, you probably want the polarity in your relationship, which is also from that strength. So his teachers might not be your teachers.
Yeah, beautiful addition. And I think so important. Thank you, because polarity is so important in this part, and it's in its own another, you know, whole topic. But if people are listening to this part, yeah, polarity is basically, you know, bringing that different balance of feminine and masculine energies. We all have both, and just embracing, embodying, and how with men and women can bring that balance, and without being a competition. I think that's sometimes can be very challenging, and the part that could be tricky for when we get into union without this knowledge and this awareness of polarity and all the topics that we are talking about. So yeah, I think that was also important to mention. I had another point that I wanted to share, but I don't. Yeah, I lost it. Might come back at some point. So the last question, Rick, is with all the inspirational people that you've worked with, spiritual teachers, leaders in the industry, what has been the most biggest learning for you, if you can pick one? I know it might be challenging, but
that's a big one. I think it might be actually what you touched on before, is that all of my teachers and guides who have helped me the most have always reminded me that they are just reflections, and they've always guided me back to my power, to my truth. They've never tried to take my power from me, and if they've noticed I'm giving it away, normally they reflect that back. And I think that comes back to your point earlier on, is that ultimately, yes, we can have guides and supports and mentors and teachers. These can be beautiful and really helpful. But ultimately, we are our greatest guide. And, maybe God's spirit, nature, the universe is a guide within that as well. But really just our ability to be able to discern, connect, to feel, and to choose a life.
Oh, I think we lost you.
And to experiment with life itself and what works for us and what doesn't. And
I think we're losing you a little bit there.
just,
I don't know if the connection on your side. Are you there, Rick? All right, we are back. Thank you, Rick. So yeah, you were saying about we are our own teachers, our own guides, our own coaches.
Yeah, I think that's honestly been the best advice that I've got from, all of my guides, mentors, and teachers, is that they've reminded me of my power, my strength, my care, my courage. And they've guided me back to that. And there's actually a beautiful practice that you can do that was done in the East, and they would do something called guru yoga. So the way around projection, which is pretty cool, is not actually to try and avoid projection, because we're going to do it to our partners, to our friends, especially to teachers and these types of things. Instead of avoiding it, actually just be aware that that's happening, and notice the qualities that you're pointing on to someone else, and then actually internalize those back into yourself. And you could do that as a meditation. You could literally imagine your ideal mentor or teacher, it could be your higher self, out there kind of in life, in reality, and you see how they're interacting, you feel them, and you see how they hold themselves, you see how they speak to other people, you see the qualities and attributes, and then you see them in front of you. You move them from being out there away from you, right there in front of you. So you sit them down in front of you, you look them eye to eye, and then you imagine them turning into rainbow body, into gold light, and then rising above your crown, and then coming back down into your body, and you embody those qualities that you were seeing. And that's the way around it. So instead of thinking that projection isn't going to happen, be aware that it is going to happen, and just remind yourself that those qualities that you see in another, you couldn't see unless you already had them within you. Because it's like a lemon or a lime, right? I could talk about a lemon or a lime now, and because you've experienced it and tasted and had the explosion of fruit in your mouth, you can feel what that feels like because you've had the experience of it. It's the same when we see the confidence or the beauty or the brilliance or the care or the compassion or the strength, whatever those qualities are that you admire in someone else. You can only notice them and experience them because they're already happening within you. And that's the moment to reflect. Thank you for reminding me, Alejandra, of my confidence or self-reflective awareness or whatever it is. Thank you for reminding me. I see that in you, and I experience that too. And that can be a really, really empowering way to navigate through life. And then, we're seeing our mentors as a mentor, but also there's a friendship level there too. And that's how, people who were studying this in the mystery schools were actually operating. A lot of the mentors and teachers were friends. They weren't just, it wasn't just like this hierarchical thing. It was like, actually, no, we're aware that someone has to play mentor and teacher while someone else plays student. And then sometimes that would role reverse. So.
Oh, so beautiful. I love all this. Thank you. We can go for hours. It's so important that you mentioned this part, because it's something I also say a lot to my clients and to myself. Whenever we feel envy for someone having something that we want, remember that is the universe saying to you, this is available to you. You couldn't see something that is not available to you. So if you desire and you see it in your reality, is because it's reachable for you. So if it's in your capacity, or if it's in your reality, it's in your capacity. And we tend to see projection only on the negative side, but it's so important to remind us all the beautiful things, all the beautiful qualities, all the beautiful emotions that you experience. You are able to embody that yourself. You have the capacity to embody that feeling whenever you need it. So thank you so much for also that exercise. I will try it myself, or just visualizing that all those qualities, or that leader, or that guide, the spiritual guide, or my highest self, and just visualizing how I embody that. So thank you so much, Rick. It's been such a pleasure having you here and sharing with us all your wisdom, your own story. And yeah, thank you. Anything else that you would like to share before we close?
Yeah, just thank you so much for the work you're doing, Alejandra. I think it's beautiful. And thank you for everyone who's listening, who's walking this path. What a beautiful path we're all walking together. And yeah, I have, there's a lot of resources, whether it be for someone listening, or maybe for, someone in your life. There's a lot of free resources on my website. There's workshops, there's masterclasses, there's things that look like meditation, but are actually, nervous system regulation exercises. Some of them are labeled like that, but everything that I have is kind of infused with the things I've been speaking about. So you can catch that on my website, which is www.rickwilliam.com.
Amazing. And any program that you are going to launch soon?
What programs am I launching soon? This year, I'm working a lot with my one-on-one clients. I've got a retreat here in Costa Rica in July 29th. I've got a retreat here next week, which has already been sold out. And yeah, there's some other things in the pipeline, but that's mostly it for me. I'm busy enough with that, and getting to be able to enjoy life at the same time as well.
Amazing. So yeah, please go and check Rick's website and all the inspirational, amazing content. You have a big community, so it's always information and content full of value and insights that you can start applying yourself. And as Rick said, a lot of free content that you can just check out. So again, thank you so much. Thank you for all the ones listening, and I will see you soon in another episode of the Awakened Woman podcast.